Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel. Before watching this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's start this video. Filling the maritime law enforcement gap. Last week, Japan gathered world maritime security leaders in Tokyo for the first ever Coast Guard Global Summit. Even without the United States Coast Guard, headline-grabbing search and rescue operation in the wake of recent hurricanes, attendees had plenty to talk about. They face an array of maritime challenges including piracy in Africa and Asia, large-scale migration in Europe, and illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing pretty much everywhere. And this before, as a convocation to cooperation and dialogue, the summit agenda avoided an issue increasingly important to ASEAN maritime services, protecting sovereign rights in the face of competing maritime entitlement claims. Any one of those challenges could stress a maritime law enforcement service to the limits of its operational effectiveness. Taken together, they point to a critical security danger that has been ignored by too many for too long. Around the world, there is a pervasive lack of adequate capabilities to deal with maritime security challenges below the threshold of war. Nations that have rarely assessed their interests accurately in the maritime domain or resources their protection accordingly are beginning to face up to the mounting threats. More than ever, governments are seeking assistance with what are primarily maritime law enforcement operations, leading even NGOs and private enterprise to try to fill the gaps in some instances. Those in Tokyo would have been well aware of these dangers, but they still grapple with sea blindness among their peoples and leaders. With a few exceptions, national security spending worldwide favors ground forces around the world. And those who are starting to see more public awareness and fiscal support nonetheless face a steep learning and investment curve. The United States Coast Guard, United States Navy, and the rest of United States government support maritime partners in many ways, but alone they can't substitute for the most capital-intensive endeavors at sea enforcement operation. When the Coast Guard released its 2014 Western Hemisphere Strategy, it acknowledged that the service would retreat to the Eastern Pacific to concentrate in large part on countering narcotic war network. Practically, this means the Coast Guard will dedicate few vessels to at-sea enforcement with partners outside of this area for the foreseeable future. Yet, continuing the discussion start at the Global Summit provides an ideal opportunity to highlight America's success in creatively addressing the demand for at-sea operation and make the case for an international burden-sharing approach. If the United States were to play a larger role confronting this challenge, it would not be acting solely out of the goodness of its heart. In many cases, partners' unmet requests for maritime law enforcement assistance are missed opportunities to strengthen relations and therapy advance larger foreign policy objectives. Similarly, meeting much requests would bolster maritime security cooperation and shape operation in pursuit of key theater objectives. These unresolved maritime security challenges also endanger United States national security objectives directly and indirectly. Directly, they aid the gestation of transitional trade networks involved in terrorism, piracy, and trafficking of all stripes. Indirectly, such challenges undermine partner nations' rule of law and degrade regional food and environmental security. Last but not least, the United States itself is not immune to the dangers of maritime security capacity gap. With the world's largest exclusive economic zone to protect and patrol, the United States Service need creative solutions to not only advance American interests abroad, but to plug holes in security at home. How can this be achieved? One approach is to actually fund the Navy and Coast Guard's budgets at the project need while sticking to the force structure mix of their shipbuilding programs. At a minimum, this means committing to spending to replace or modernize aging vessels and grow the fleets to the size argued for by service ships without substantially altering the ratio of the types of ship. This will provide more operational platforms, more at sea operational days, and therefore more opportunities for supporting maritime enforcement partnership, despite the Navy's rightful focus on deterring and defeating competitors. Another approach will be to modify the United States military's force structure mix, including more high-endurance vessels explicitly built for expeditionary law enforcement mission sets, such as increasing the Coast Guard Legends-class national security cutter production run. While both these options would deliver major payoffs, their impacts would not be felt for some time, and fiscal and political realities make them remote prospects at present. Instead, existing programs like the Secretary of Defense Oceania Maritime Security Initiative and the Africa Maritime Law Enforcement Partnership, under the auspices of Africa Common, point to a creative, collaborative way of addressing the capacity deficiency. Both initiatives mix and match available maritime platforms, enforcement capabilities, and sovereign authorities across service and nation in models that could be expanded to a global program. In a typical Oceania Maritime Security Initiative joint fishery patrol, a liaisons officer and a law enforcement detachment from the United States Coast Guard embark a United States Navy vessel. They are joined by a local law enforcement official under the auspice of a bilateral shipwrighter agreement, which allow these officials to ride on foreign vessels and share and exercise maritime laws and regulations from the country. The Africa Maritime Law Enforcement Partnership similarly employs Navy vessel and Coast Guard law enforcement detachment, but in a variation on the model, the detachment act in an advise and assist role to the local boarding teams, which led the enforcement operation, and a partner nation vessels often substitutes for the navies. Elsewhere, nations have signed bilateral shipwrighter agreements to enforce international conventions for managing fish stock on the high seas or beyond the limits of coastal state 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. To take one example, the United States Coast Guard embarks Chinese fisheries officials to facilitate the timely boarding of Chinese flag vessels suspect of high seas drift net fishing, which contravenes both a convention and a United Nations General Assembly resolution prohibiting large-scale high seas drift net fishing. While these agreements have historically been limited to fishing violation or narcotics trafficking, their scope has been broadening to cover all maritime law enforcement missions. To unlock the full potential of these models, the United States needs to take a global and flexible view towards maritime security burden sharing. This involves increasing the number of partners undertaking such endeavors by contributing a mix of maritime platforms, enforcement capabilities, and sovereign authorities. Call it the global, sorry, call it the Global Maritime Security Initiative. Okay everyone, that's all this article today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until the next one, bye bye.